Wow, insane scenes are unfolding right now as if they were from V for Vendetta themselves, with a large number of demonstrators, of protesters in Hong Kong storming their legislative building successfully in a mass protest that cannot be ignored, as they are just as captivating as fascinating, mainly because the protests in Hong Kong, as well as other Asian countries, are so different to the idiocracy, nonsense, stupidness happening, of course, in the United States. And that's why in this video I want to highlight the differences between protests. They're not even protests. It's more like buffoonery where people fight each other instead of actually going against governments. Anyway, regardless of all of that, compared to, of course, the latest developments happening right now in Hong Kong. And before we do that, just a reminder, we give you a video every single day. I have not taken a break in I don't know how long. And I do this because I work for you. I don't work for any special interest. I don't work for any government or corporation. I work because of your sponsorship, your small donations, either through mail, affiliate codes, cryptocurrencies, or just even donating $1 means the world to us and keeps us up and running. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be here. So once again, thank you everyone going to wearechange.org/donate. Now, the events in Hong Kong are stunning. The videos, the footage, the information coming out of there is something that I haven't seen in a very long time. Compare that to what's happening here in the United States, and it is absolutely pitiful. Uh-oh, my pop filter. Good luck, guys. Anyway, if you look at what's happening in the United States, we have been so socially conditioned and programmed that we see the fellow man as the main problem and cause of all of our exploited well-being. You know, of course, it's not the prison, it's not the banking, it's not the pharma, the GMO, the military-industrial complexes in the world screwing us over while the government helps them out by taxing us to death. No. That's not the problem. Jim Bob over there has a different opinion than me. Let's go hit him over the head with a frickin' crowbar. That's protesting in America, and that's stupid, and that looks absolutely childish compared to the events that are unfolding right now in Hong Kong. I mean, look at this nonsense. This is just footage from the last time I was in Portland documenting a protest there that, of course, set Antifa against the Proud Boys. And look at this. They're arguing and fighting over throwing over a porta potty. That's American protesting in the middle of the road. Meanwhile, in countries like Japan, where a public bus line was being privatized and the price of bus fares were rising unfairly, according to some people, what did the Japanese people do? Well, the Japanese bus drivers decided to strike. And how did they strike? They didn't inconvenience people. They didn't block their road. They didn't overthrow porta potties. What they did is they just said, you know what? We're still going to drive and operate the buses, but we're not going to be charging people and offering free travel to everyone using the buses until the situation gets rectified. A tactic that worked, and the protests in Hong Kong are following similar measures. But in all fairness, especially with the latest events, the situation is getting out of hand. But this has been building for a very long time, as we just saw a few weeks ago, where on June 17th, according to some estimates, 2 million people made one of the largest gatherings in that territory's history, protesting an extradition law that many people fear will allow China, specifically mainland China, from selecting and persecuting protesters in Hong Kong, which, by the way, is a Chinese territory, but is in a transition state because it was a free economic market for a very long time. China has been given it back from the United Kingdom, and right now we are seeing a transition of Hong Kong to be under, of course, the Chinese ruling system. It is still under its own system, which many Hong Kong protesters say has been undermined and is slowly being taken over by the Chinese, which is pretty much exactly what's happening here. And they are worried about some of the draconian, tyrannical measures of China being instituted in, of course, Hong Kong. And this is pretty much the major backdrop of these protests. But again, an estimated 2 million people participated. The police claim it was 300,000. The numbers are debatable, but the photos and the larger impact of this are not. And the most remarkable thing and the biggest difference is, of course, after this protest, protesters stayed to clean the roads and left them spotless, sweeping and cleaning any rubbish from their gathering. Yes, this is one of the biggest differences. Well, that's one of them. We're going to get into a lot of them. But unlike the United States, where literally climate change activists leave a lot of the areas that they protested in with just utter squalor. And that's an extremely impressive feat that occurred in Hong Kong, where, again, an estimated 1/3 of the population came out into the streets and didn't leave a trace that they were even there. After that protest, the Hong Kong protesters and movement said publicly that they are adopting Bruce Lee's method and adapting them to protest, specifically adapting actions to, quote, go with the flow and be like water, where with the mass numbers that they have, they would unexpectedly roll from one spot to another, making it very difficult to, of course, police. Establishing, of course, prolonged mass sit-ins, spontaneous road blockages, and circling of buildings, while, of course, always making way for ambulances, and in some instances, even making routes for fellow workers to easily get through them. And remarkably, doing all of this as a leaderless movement, which of course is done on purpose, because if they had a leader, that leader would of course be compromised and taken down, which is extremely impressive compared to, of course, the divide and conquer agenda that has been successfully playing out in the United States, where again, protesters fight each other rather than organize together, trying to, of course, be as effective as possible without inconveniencing everyone else, which is important. Now, another thing that's very remarkable from these protests is the simple use of umbrellas, which, again, can't be used as a weapon, but are very, very, very effective against pepper spray, police batons, and of course also facial recognition, avoiding of course the track, trace, and database intrusive Orwellian system of the Chinese AI facial recognition technology, which has been brought to you by, of course, Western multinational corporations that sold it to them. And just like Bruce Lee said, instead of fighting force with force, anger with anger, well, he didn't say that. I'm just kind of ad-libbing it, but he insinuated it with the whole water thing. And instead of coming from the same negative, destructive energy as the police were trying to, of course, shut them down, all you have to do is kind of redirect that energy. And there's nothing more exemplifying that than, of course, a police officer's hitting a baton and only hitting the soft cloth of an umbrella. When tear gas lands in Hong Kong, there's organized members of the protest that instead of picking it up and throwing it back at the police, all they do is run along with water bottles and literally extinguish the tear gas as soon as it lands. I mean, just thinking about that. Why haven't the dummies in the Western world thought of this? It's not illegal to be like, oh, there's tear gas. Oh, my water bottle spilled. Oh, tear gas is gone. It is illegal to pick up tear gas and throw it against the police. Yeah, that's legal. But it's brilliant. Another aspect of this is the civility. And even when the Hong Kong protesters stormed their government building today, they literally organized a group that put up signs that said and marked different items. If it was a cultural item, they wrote, should be preserved, don't destroyed. Don't destroy. They went to the library and put up signs saying, preserve books, don't destroy. They went to the kitchen and put up signs saying, quote, we're not thieves, we don't take before asking. And if they did take a water bottle, they left money for that water bottle or drink, paying for it instead of stealing. Unlike the United States, that whenever a store door opens or gets broken, it's automatically a scene from what looks like a freaking zombie apocalypse that we saw all across this nation whenever there is just a slight hint of disorder. Another major difference that I saw specifically highlighted in a China Uncensored video. By the way, I will be putting this video in the description below. They are doing live coverage right now in Hong Kong, which you should check out. They're streaming for a very long time there. But one of the things that I saw throughout one of their broadcasts is when they were talking to an individual is the mentality of these protesters that say, but again, it is not their choice to protest. It's the government's choice to put all of this together that has put them in a position where they must protest. The protesters, of course, also do their best to be as peaceful as possible and not to try to escalate the violence. The protests, of course, are also censored and discredited by many Chinese and even some Hong Kong media stations, with a lot of fake news, accusations, and attacks against this group of protesters. The protesters have vocally spoken out about how these protests are for the future of their children and not just themselves, which is pretty much the total opposite of U.S. mainline millennial thinking. The protesters in Hong Kong also have decided on a uniform, making it very difficult for, of course, the track, trace, and database system to capture specific individuals, deciding to all wear yellow helmets, similar eye masks, similar face masks, and also specifically black t-shirts with blue jeans, and also gloves. Now, holy cow, I think there's a lot to learn from this. I think the way that they're doing it shows us how effective, how intelligent, how smart, how just groundbreaking movements could be if utilized in the right way and focused on a particular issue rather than, of course, hitting Jim Bob over there with the crowbar over the head because he disagrees with you and you have butthurt millennial opinions and feelings. You can't handle someone thinking something different. I'm sorry, I'm digressing. Yeah. Now, to be fair, there are a lot of criticism of the movements. It is important to point out that there was graffiti used today. There was also, of course, vandalism used today, as literally the protesters broke through a major security perimeter and were able to take control of a government building. It has been reported that eggs and bricks were also thrown at police officers. The legislative building was spray painted with profanity. And, of course, the British colonial Hong Kong flag was draped over the legislature's podium in a major signal, of course, against the Chinese government, which, of course, it is in the interest of Western countries, including the United Kingdom, that, by the way, just banned the sale of tear gas to Hong Kong, that it works in the special interest of. So, with that, we can now understand why there is mostly favorable media coverage of this movement in the Western media, compared, of course, to the Yellow Vest movement, which I, of course, was on the ground floor, covered very closely, and we saw the opposite of in our media that we consume. So there is a special interest behind this that we should understand, but by golly, what is happening in Hong Kong is extraordinary, to say the least. It is something that we should pay attention to. It is something that we should learn from. I mean, even members of the press in Hong Kong decided to show their distrust of the system and the handling of the protest by police, which they have accused of being overly aggressive, by literally putting on protective clothing and helmets during a press conference by the police in Hong Kong, sending a unifying message to where they stand. Now, if this is not something to learn from, I don't know what is, because this is something totally different than we have ever seen, specifically in the United States. I'm personally even thinking about maybe doing a GoFundMe to try to go out there to do some on-the-ground reporting. Let me know if you would like that, if you would support that, if you think that is a good idea, if you would like to see me out there. I would love to hear your feedback. I hope this video was helpful. If you know a crazy protester, an Antifa member, or a Proud Boy who can't fathom another person for their opinions or their actions and wants to fight each other, send this to them, please. Send this to individuals so we could have a learning lesson of how protests can actually be effective instead of destructive and horrible as they are in the United States. As there's blood on the streets, journalists being maimed, individuals getting crowbarred over the head by people thinking that they're fighting righteously, which is idiotic. These people, come on, man. Seriously, what are you doing? What are you doing? and I covered again, time and time again, how Antifa has been infiltrated by, of course, police departments, how police officers were caught in Antifa, dressed as Antifa, causing violence, causing destruction of property, making every one of the protesters associated or not associated with them look bad. This is, again, in my opinion, all done on purpose, because if you look at the larger actions, these actions push away from us actually making real significant change for the better, going after the special interests who are screwing us over, the special interests that are at the helm and are using government. And honestly, if you look at the actions of Antifa and all these crazy people using extreme violence against innocent people, who do they serve? What are their outcomes? What happens in the long term with these actions progressing and escalating as they are? You think about that for just a little bit, because there is something widely to think about, especially with the agenda, especially with the effects that we are seeing, the larger horrible ramifications of. That's my take on it. Let me know if you think I'm wrong or if you think I'm right in the comment section below. I hope you appreciated this video, and if you did, even if you didn't, hell, share this video, because that's the only way it's going to get out there to the larger public. YouTube, Google, holy cow, I can't tell you what's happening behind the scenes, how bad it is for us, mainly because we cover topics like this. We discover issues that are important, contrarian, and against, of course, the mainline status quo, psychological divide and conquer warfare that's mainly set against you, and, of course, perception of reality. Let's break that perception by thinking outside of the box, looking at the bigger picture here, and most importantly, my voice peaked there. I think I hit puberty there. Most importantly, understanding that together, we are change. Wow, that was corny, but love you. Stay tuned for more.